Thanks for joining Liberty Online today. This is the last time we'll be here at the Carnegie Room for filming our services. We are super excited about moving into our new home, but before we can unpack and move in, first we have to embrace moving day. So sit back with your tea or cup of coffee and listen to this one-off message from Phil Moving Day.
Good morning and welcome to Liberty Online, and today is our last day ever filming here at the Carnegie Room because church, we are moving house, and today is like moving day, and so I'm going to do a one-off message called Moving Day. And I don't know if many of you have moved house. Most of you probably have at some point, where you own or rent a house and then you move into a new stuff and you have to take all of your stuff with you. And most people find, if you've done it a few times, moving house is probably one of the most stressful things you can ever do. There's so many difficult things you have to do, so much admin you have to do, the actual hard work of moving the stuff. And so, you know, moving house, although it's great and it's fun, it brings its difficulties with it. It brings negativity, it brings difficult things you have to do. And so the same with us moving house, church. Sometimes we have to do difficult things. Sometimes we have to have difficult conversations. And so I actually want to delve into this when we're talking about our moving day as a church, something I think we need to talk about. And so, like when you move house, the church has to get ready for moving day. We have to have a clear out. And before we filmed this morning, the team, in the media team and the sound team here, actually cleared out our kids' cupboard in the Carnegie Room. There's so much stuff, it's ridiculous. Who knew it could all fit into that tiny little store? So we brought that down into the Carnegie Room to go into the van, to go to our other storage place to go through it all. But we also have a storeroom, a big storeroom that has all of our old stuff from our old building at Kelvin Place and all of the other things that we've accrued. We've kept everything and we've accrued so much stuff over the last nearly 21 years. It is immense, the amount of stuff that we have. And so today, what I want to do is I'm going to look at the Israelites and their journey from being slaves in Egypt all the way to entering the land that God had promised them, their promised land, their home. And that's a lot of time period we're going to cover in a small, short message here. But we're going to look at the Israelites moving from being slaves in Egypt all the way to having their home in the promised land with this idea of moving day. And when I'm talking about our church moving day and moving into our new building, moving into our new hub, moving into our new home, but it's not just applicable to the church situation. I think it is in our personal life too, anytime we're moving from one thing to another. And so the lesson throughout today is this, that we need to leave some things behind. That we need to leave some things behind. Because our stuff in storage, we got everything, mate. Oh, it's ridiculous. I went through it the other day because you can barely get in the store to actually have a look at the stuff that's in the store. And we've got everything, including the kitchen sink. And I mean literally including in fact, we've got 2 kitchen sinks. And so, you know, there's that joke about when you pack for something, you know, they've included the kitchen sink. We ain't taken the kitchen sink. We don't need to because we've got a kitchen that we've bought that has a sink. So there are things that we need to leave behind. We've got hundreds of ceiling tiles that we've kept just in case we're in an industrial unit, but we actually won't need them because we don't need all of them because most of it's got hard ceilings throughout. We need to get rid of stuff. We need to either sell stuff or give stuff away or even skip stuff. And I went through it. I went through every item that we own as a church. And can I tell you, we need to get rid of most of it. Most of it's not usable, and we've kept it over the years just in case, but most of it isn't usable. It's either obsolete or the building doesn't need it, or it's so old, like some of our technology, some of our light and our sound gear, it's like you just wouldn't use that anymore. You know, got an old camera. And really, you know, us as a church, we only want to take the things that are useful to build his kingdom. And I'm talking about the practical, physical things, but I think there's so many more things that we're talking about. We only want to take the things that are useful, are good, are beneficial to build his kingdom. So let's jump in. And we know the story of the Israelites. They're in Egypt. They've been enslaved over a few hundred years. And Pharaoh finally lets them go after Moses had gone to him and said, come on, let him go. Let's go. And so done lots of miracles and stuff, and very difficult time for Pharaoh and his people. But Pharaoh finally lets him go. In fact, he orders them, go, leave. They even give them stuff to make them leave. Have all of our stuff, have our gold, have our stuff, take it with you, leave. And so we jump in at that point of the story. Exodus 12, reading from verse 31. It says this: Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron during the night. Get out, he ordered. Leave my people and take the rest of the Israelites with you. Go and worship the Lord as you've requested. That's what he's saying. Take your flocks and herds as you said and be gone. Go, but bless me as you leave, because he understood the power of God and what had happened. He said, but bless me before you leave. And it says this in verse 33, all the Egyptians urged the people of Israel to get out of their land as quickly as possible, for they thought we will all die, because there were some horrible things happening at the time, and they're just saying, you know what, just go, just leave us. And it says this, verse 34, the Israelites took their bread dough before yeast was added. They wrapped their kneading boards in their cloaks and carried them on their shoulders. So they took loads and loads of stuff with them. One of the things was for the journey was for food, but the Israelites took their bread dough before yeast was added. And if you jump down to verse 38, it says this: a rabble of non-Israelites went with them. So like a crew just carried on with them. They thought, oh, this stuff is going, people are moving. They're just like maybe they're like the British. They just thought, there's a queue, I better join it. But a rabble of non-Israelites went with them, along with great flocks and herds of livestock. It says this: for bread they baked flat cakes from the dough without yeast they had brought from Egypt. It was made without yeast because the people were driven out of Egypt in such a hurry they had no time to prepare the bread or other food. So when you depending on how you make bread, you'd make the dough and then you'd add yeast into it, obviously to make it expand. But the Israelites had to leave at such a rate they didn't even get time to do that. None of them, which is quite strange because there's lots and lots of people, but nobody had time to add yeast into their bread to allow it to rise before they took it with them. And it's And you might think, what's that? Why is that even relevant? Like, is it because like the writer of this was a baker and he thought that's not good? No, it's a lovely little detail recorded in the story about the yeast. The scripture talks about the yeast works its way through a whole batch of things, and later in scripture in the New Testament, I think it's talking about like perhaps one divisive person can infect everything, and They like I thought about this, and they may have been in such a hurry that they left the yeast and they didn't add it to the bread, but they took with them some things that act like yeast, that infect the whole batch. And one of them things was even the rabble, like it said in Scripture. The rabble went with them, and that's an important point that you find out later in the story. But what my point is from the beginning is that I want to learn what the Israelites didn't. I want us as a church collectively to learn what the Israelites didn't. I want as an individual learn what the Israelites didn't. And that is, again, that we need to leave some things behind. And so later in the story, Pharaoh changed his mind. All of a sudden, he was like, why am I letting this? This is the biggest resource our country has. These hundreds of thousands of slaves making lots and lots of products. Why would I let them go? It suddenly he realized. And so he takes chase and chases after the Israelites. And so we'll jump down Exodus 14 to verse 10. It says this: as Pharaoh approached, the people of Israel looked up and panicked. And I think that's a natural response when you've got an army of people wanting to come and kill you. They panicked when they saw the Egyptians overtaking them. They cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, why did you... Look at this. They cried out to the Lord and to Moses, why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? We could have just stayed in Egypt and died. Why bring us all the way out here to do it? It says, what have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen while we were still in Egypt? Like, you can imagine Dave at the back. Oi, Moses, I told you this was going to happen before you set out. He said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness. And I would actually argue it's not. But anyway, verse 13 says this: but Moses told the people, he said this to them, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. and you see what the Israelites brought with them, which you would argue is completely natural. But what they brought with them that I think we need to leave behind, that I encourage you to leave behind, that I want to leave behind, is they brought fear with them on their journey. They brought fear from their slaveness, from being slaves in Egypt, to their new home. They were bringing fear with them, and they brought their fear, their lack of faith, despite seeing all the miracles that had already happened. Everything that had led up to this point still allowed them to carry fear with them, to pack fear into their van, to see the moving van on moving day and pack fear into the back of it. They would rather be a slave than be free and have risk. And I'll put it like this: you can take the slave out of Egypt, but not the Egypt out of the slave. It's very difficult to do that. And when Moses was talking to this people and they were showing that they were afraid and they showed fear, Moses was like that right there. That thing you're doing now, that fear of people, leave that. Leave that right here on this side of the Red Sea. Don't bring it with us. Leave it here. Do not be afraid. That is a thing that I'm happy for us to skip, just like the ceiling tiles, just like the sink and the second sink. I'm happy to skip them or sell them or give them away. The same with fear. I'm happy for us to leave that here. If we're carrying that in us, let's leave it here before we go into our new home. Let's not pack it in the van. Let's skip it. So I want to say, leave your fear. And then so God then sorted them out. And he parted the sea, and the Egyptians' army was wiped out. I don't know, I'm skipping through this, and it's a long period of time, but for time's sake. And we'll read from verse 31. It says this: when the people of Israel saw the mighty power that the Lord had unleashed against the Egyptians, they were filled with awe. So they saw this big miracle again. They were filled with awe before him. And check this out. It says this: they put their faith in the Lord. No longer were they filled with fear. They put their faith in the Lord and in his servant Moses. And you're thinking, brilliant. That is great. And then verse 32 says, and they lived happily ever after. And that's not what it says. It's crazy. All it took was for them to get thirsty, which I understand is a big human need. But all it took was them to get thirsty. A little later, you jump down to Exodus 15:24. Check this out. They've gone from full of faith in God and their leader Moses all the way to this. 24. Then the people complained. And it says this, and turned against Moses. What are we going to drink? They demanded. So in a flash, in the turn of a page, they turned against Moses and they made unfair judgments and expectations about him. I want you to think about this. Moses was just a dude. He was a glowing dude. He had nice hair. He was a handsome fella. He was a good leader, but he was just one of them. And all of a sudden, he's in the same pickle as they are. No different. He's thirsty too. And yet they're like, they turned from having great faith in God and Moses to really not liking Moses at all and started being judgmental about him, even though he was in the same boat as them. He's just freed them from seeing all these wonderful things, and yet they turned against him. And I want to say this for your heart, for your soul, for your attitudes. And for me as well, is to leave your harsh judgments of others. Is don't pack that with us. Don't pack your harsh judgments of others. I think it's been very easy during COVID, particularly we as a nation, as a world even, have gone through something that we've never gone through before. And it's been really easy to make harsh judgments about other people's actions or inactions, their inability to meet our needs. And it's like I have this picture in my mind when some people complain about other people, especially during the COVID pandemic. It's like they're in a rowboat lost out at sea, and they're moaning at the person who's drowning in the water that they're not helping them. And everyone's in the same boat or in the same sea. And so we need to not have harsh judgments of other people, whatever that may look like. And when I looked at Scripture, I was like, why the sudden change from faith in the Lord and his servant Moses? Why the sudden harsh judgment? Why did they turn against God and Moses? I don't think it was just the thirstiness. And in fact, I think it's documented in Numbers, in a different book in the Bible, Numbers 11:4-5. It's talking about the same story. It says this in verse 4, "Then the foreign rabble," so the non-Israelite people who had gone along with the Israelites, who they'd taken along on moving day, the rabble as they're called, who were traveling with the, it says, "Then the foreign rabble who were traveling with the Israelites began to crave the good things of Egypt." So they were starting to miss that sort of stuff. They weren't invested in the same way the Israelites were. Maybe they weren't enslaved in the same way as the Israelites. They don't have a promised land that they're going to. And so in their mind, front and center, they were craving the good things of Egypt and were started about it. To the point it says then, "And the people of Israel also began to complain." And that's the stage of things. It was the rabble. The rabble were complaining. And complaining is infectious. It's like yeast. The rabble complained to the point where it infected the Israelites, where they began to complain as well. "Oh, for some meat," they exclaimed. "We remember the fish we used to eat for free in Egypt." It weren't for free. You were a slave. You were doing 14-hour days. The fish we were used to eat for free in Egypt, and we had all the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic we wanted. The rabble, that yeast they should have left behind, and we'll get to them in a minute too. But what I want to say is that for us, and as you as an individual and us as a church, as we move forward from one place to moving into our home on moving days, to leave your comparison. These guys, and it started with the rabble, but it was infected into the people of God, that they started comparing what I think was apples and oranges, when it wasn't really. It was comparing manna with fish. But they are having a comparison between where they were and where they were going, what other people still have access to and what they have. And I want to say we need to leave our comparison. Leave our comparison, whatever that is in your personal life or even regard with the church building. And I want to say, don't get caught up in that game. It's so futile. It's just pointless. You know, you could compare what our new building could be compared to what other people have. I think it's futile. It's stupid. I think we should celebrate difference, celebrate uniqueness, celebrate the things that bring a uniqueness that we can have in that place, on that journey, in our new home. I want to say comparison is a loser's game. It's like being at Vegas for a long period of time. If you play long enough, you lose everything. And so we journey on even further. And it says in Exodus 16 from verse 2, it says this. A little while later, there too, the whole community of Israel complained about Moses and Aaron. Aaron is his bro's second in command, if you like. The whole community, I want you to think about this, it's gone from a few of the foreign rabble to some of the Israelites, to the whole community of Israel complained about Moses. If only the Lord had killed us back in Egypt. What they moaned. And what a moan. If only God had killed me, it would have been better. So it went from a few outsiders to a few Israelites to the whole community, all because of the yeast that they didn't leave behind, that rabble. And another point, and this word's used a lot throughout this whole story. And what I want to encourage us to leave behind is to leave your complaining. Leave your complaining. You know, sometimes at home, Steph will say that I can be a whinger. I like having a moan about things every now and again, get it off your chest, feel better. But don't underestimate the power that has, not just on you and your psyche and your soul, but the people that are around you. Leave your complaining or leave your self-pity, whatever the topic is, whether that's you haven't got any onions or garlic, or even, like I said, how the world or your friends or your family or your church have responded during COVID. We've all been sinking in the same boat, and I want to say, get a bucket and start helping bail out. Don't poke holes in the boat. And it says this, and why is it so important? I want you to think about this. The people complain so much. And it's recorded. I read through this again, and I've read this lots and lots of times, but I've read through this whole story again, and I was getting annoyed with the Israelites to the point I want to punch them in the face. Honestly, I was getting angry with them. I'm just reading it. But the people complained so much, it drove their leader to want God to kill him. I want you to think about this. Don't be misled about the power of complaining. It's recorded in Numbers 11, 13 to 15, when Moses says this. And he's just like, the people have been complaining to him constantly. And he went and he was screaming out to God, having a chat, saying, where am I supposed to get meat for all these people? I'm like, I'm not a butcher, for one. And I haven't got a refrigeration van that holds enough for millions of people. They said, where am I supposed to get meat for all these people? They keep whining to me, saying, give us meat to eat. It says this, that Moses, and you can feel his pain, you can feel the burden. I can't carry all these people by myself. The load is far too heavy. If this is how you intend to treat me, God, if this is how it's going to go on, just go ahead and kill me now. Do me a favor and spare me the misery. That's the power of complaining. But also something that Moses carried into the wilderness and toward their new home that he should have left behind is that he, like me, like you, like we, should leave your insecurity. Leave your insecurity behind. Don't pack it with us. Let's not take that on the journey. Let's not unpack that out of the box and put it somewhere in our new home. You know, or the need for validation from others. Let's not take that with us. Let's choose to leave that with the kitchen sink. Let's leave that. Let's not pack it on moving day. And we had a great example, actually, not too long ago about a newspaper article that went out in the town, and there was some feedback on Facebook that was negative in some regards. And honestly, like people had told me, I spoke to 3 or 4 different people about it. And honestly, and I'm not saying this because I think I should be like this, I don't care. I really don't. And it's not that we won't have to respond to certain things in our life that come up that might be negative, that we've got to respond to have a positive outcome. But I mean the burden or weight of someone else's opinion who doesn't know anything about a situation. I really don't care. Me and Steph have gone through this process of leaving that stuff behind, of choosing we're going to leave it behind. It's not that it's not there, but we're choosing not to pack it. We're choosing not to take it with us to our new home. And so, for time's sake, we'll skip ahead. And Egypt has long gone, been wiped out. And Moses sends out some spies into the promised land. And so we're reading Numbers 13 from verse 30. It says this. So they're sending spies out into this promised land to check it out, to see how they can go and take that land. And it says this, that Caleb told the people, they'd come back. Caleb told the people to be quiet and listen to Moses. And Caleb said, I like the way that Caleb said, shush, listen to Moses. And then he jumps in and speaks. It says, Caleb said, let's go now and take possession of the land. We should be more than able to conquer it. But the men who had gone with him, the other spies, it was him and Joshua, but the other 10, the men who had gone with him said, we can't attack those people. They're too strong for us. Verse 32, so they began to spread lies among the Israelites about the land that explored, they said. The land we explored is one that devours those who live there. All the people we saw there were very tall. They're big units. We can't fight against them. We saw Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak are Nephilim. We felt as small as grasshoppers. There's big groups of people, and we felt as small as grasshoppers. And that's how we must have looked to them. And there's that insecurity again against other people. But Joshua agreed with Caleb. He was like, no, we are more than able. We can do this. It's well within our remit, well within our power, well within our ability with God on our side. Joshua and Caleb agreed. But the other 10 didn't. The other 10 doubted themselves, doubted their ability, doubted God with them. And I want to say the same about us. What we don't want to pack is we want to leave our doubt. Leave your doubt. It's recorded in Numbers 32. If we jump down to verse 10, it says this, then the Lord was very angry with them and he vowed, because of this principle, of all those I rescued from Egypt, no one who is 20 years old or older will ever see the land. He said, you're never going to go to the promised land. Those guys are never going to see home. You're never going to unpack. Your moving day is going to last 4 years. I'm making you wait. Only the people who are under 20, all you old people who have carried and bought all your bad baggage, I'm not having you. I'm not taking you. I'm leaving you here. And it says, to the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For they have not obeyed me wholeheartedly. Check this out, verse 12. The only exceptions are Caleb and Joshua. For they have wholeheartedly followed the Lord. The only two that come back and said, we are able. The only two that didn't have full of doubt. The only ones that hadn't packed a box of doubt with them were the only ones who were allowed to inhabit the promised land. So I want to say, I think it's important that we need to leave our doubt, whatever that is in our old place, in this room. And as tough as it might seem, in church, and us as a church together, and in your personal life too, sometimes we need to leave some people. And that sounds really harsh and horrible and might have people have bad opinions about me, but like I said, I don't care. That you don't care or love about people. No, God cared and loved about all his people. But there were just some things that he couldn't take to the home. There are some things he couldn't take into the promised land. And there's some things that you can't take in your personal life, moving forward from A to B, moving from one place to another, moving from one purpose to another, moving to a place where God wants you to be and wants you to inhabit, is that sometimes we have to leave some people. People that don't share the same vision or have the same faith or the same trust in God, or those who are led by flesh or fear or selfishness, whatever it is. And God decided at this point there were some things and some people, some attitudes he could not allow to go with his people to their new home, because he knew, just like before, just like what we've been reading, it would act like yeast and infect the whole batch. And so we skip ahead many years of delay and dysfunction and disobedience. Moses had died and Joshua led the people across the Jordan toward their home. But only after the process of leaving stuff behind. I want you to think about this. They had a 40-year moving day where they had to go through the process of saying, we're not taking that, we're not taking that, we're not taking that. And they went through that process of leaving all them things behind. And even the night before, I want you to think about this, the night before that Joshua led the people across the Jordan, what he said from God was, purify yourself. Before we go and do this thing and set up home, I want you to purify yourself. I want you to take everything that shouldn't come with us and leave it. I want you to take all that junk, all that crap, all that stuff that God doesn't want us to carry, and I want you to leave it on this side of the Jordan. We're not going to act like the Israelites did, and we're not going to cross the Red Sea carrying all this stuff. I want you to leave all that stuff behind. Purify yourself. So I want to ask you in your life, but also as us as a church, as we build a home together at the Hub, I want to ask you, what do you need to leave behind? What is it that you need to leave behind? Because I believe that, church, we need to leave some stuff in Egypt. There's some stuff that we need to leave in the wilderness. There's some stuff that we need to leave on that side of the Jordan and not take to our new home. Because we only want to take things that are useful to build his kingdom. So, as I finish up, what do we want to take? See, we've got loads of stuff in our storeroom that I do want to take. There's loads of gear, loads of things that are beneficial that we haven't been using that we can take. But just like the Israelites crossing the Jordan, they carried with them the Ark of the Covenant. That picture of the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant before them, which carried the very presence of God. And the one thing that is already packed in our van, that this is a non-negotiable, that our leadership all agree, the one thing, and I'm not talking about ceiling tiles, the one thing that we've already packed in our van is Jesus. Everything that we do and everything we will always do is going to be about him. And like the Israelites, we carry within us, his spirit. And so that is packed. That's in the van. That's coming with us. So let's get that out of the way. But what else are we taking? I'm not talking about the physical stuff. What else do I want you to bring with us for our moving day? What else do we need to pack to bring to our new home? Well, if we're not going to pack, if we're going to leave fear, let's pack faith. If we're going to leave judgment, harsh judgment of other people, let us pack grace. If we're going to leave comparison, then let us pack celebration of how God will use us uniquely. If we're going to leave complaining and self-pity, let's pack gratitude. If we're going to leave insecurity, let's pack the knowledge of who you are in Christ. If we're going to leave doubt on one side of the Jordan, then let's pack and take and carry with us confidence in him and him in you. And if we've got to leave some people, then why not pack our invitation for those who don't know him yet? So there's loads of things that we need to leave behind. There's loads of things that we need to bring. So I want to say, bring what you have. Bring your compassion, bring your gifts, bring your service, bring your friends, bring your family, bring your neighbors, bring your zeal, bring your energy, bring your excitement, bring a renewed spirit of stronger desperation to seek God. I want us to bring unity, bring great expectation like we've been hearing about over the last few weeks. Bring great expectations of how God will use us in the future. Bring your desire to connect and love people. So, are your bags packed? Because it is moving day. And Carnegie Room, we thank you for being our house, but it's now time to move into our home. And church, we've waited a long time, but it's moving day. And I shall see you there soon.
Well, thanks for joining us for the last time in the Carnegie Room. Next week, we plan to give you a video tour of our new home, The Hub, what it looks like before all of our volunteers refurbish the venue. Remember, we are still raising funds to refurbish the auditorium, so if you want to give into that, visit libertycentre.org.uk. We shall see you online next week, and then only a few weeks to wait until we see you in person. Bye for now.